I'm Vasily and welcome to my channel Not For The Faint Crafted. If you are new, welcome, and if you're not new, welcome back. So today is May the 4th, and in honour of Star Wars Day, I want to teach you how to make these DIY Star Wars soap bars. So I've made 3 types using the exact same principle, which is the melt and pour method, using just a few items, but I've tweaked each method. So definitely go check that out, so then you can get a flavour of all the different types of things you can do with a basic soap base. And if you do have little ones and you're struggling to get them to wash their hands more regularly, this is honestly a great way to incentivize them, because the only way they can get access to the toys is if they use the soap itself. But yeah, if you did like this video, please do give it a big thumbs up, and if you want to see more of my how-to videos, then do click that subscribe button. And if you do want to try and recreate this at home yourself, then do stick through right to the end of the video, because I did make hiccups along the way when making these soap bars. So to avoid those mistakes, definitely check out those pointers at the end of the video. But anyway, I'll head straight to the crafts and I'll see you soon. Bye! So for this DIY, you will need some melt and pour crystal soap base, and you will need to cut this up into roughly 8 2x2 centimeter cubes. You'll also need a Pyrex jug, a silicone soap mold, a toy that fits into the silicone soap mold, and, which is optional, you can also add in some isopropyl spray, and the purpose for this is just to remove as many bubbles as possible when you're creating your soap. So then, taking your cubes of soap, you want to melt this in the microwave roughly 1.5 minutes, stopping every 30 seconds till it turns into liquid form. And then you want to take your isopropyl spray and spray this a few times just to remove as many of those bubbles that are formed during the melting process. You'll also want to spray the inside of your silicone mold and around your toy, again just to avoid as many bubbles forming. And then taking your melted soap, you then want to pour this slowly on the corner of your silicone soap mold, and roughly 1/3 of the way of your soap, just to hold the toy down. And if you see any bubbles forming during this process, you just want to spray this down with isopropyl spray. So once you start to see that cool down and harden, you then want to take the remainder soap that's left in your Pyrex jug, reheat this in the microwave using the exact same process, stopping every 30 seconds for roughly 1.5 minutes till it turns into liquid form. And once that's done, you then want to pour the remainder into the corner of your silicone soap mold, trying to avoid as many bubbles forming, but if they do, you can always use your isopropyl spray to spray these down. Finally, once that's all cooled down and hardened, you just want to take your soap out of your soap mold, and it should look something like this. So to make the next DIY, you'll need exactly the same things as the first DIY, however you will want to include a further addition, which is the cosmetic grade glitter. However, if you did skip the first DIY, I'll quickly summarise the other items that you'll need for this craft. You will need roughly 8 2x2 centimeter cubes of crystal clear soap base. That will make approximately 1 soap bar, which is roughly 7 centimeters in height and 2 centimeters in width. You'll also need a Pyrex jug, the silicone soap mold itself, a toy that's small enough to fit into your silicone soap mold, and you may also want to add in some isopropyl alcohol spray, which again helps reduce the bubbles that form during that melting process. So first you want to microwave that soap base in that Pyrex jug for roughly 1.5 minutes, stopping every 30 seconds till it eventually turns into a liquid form. And once that's done, you want to then spray this with isopropyl spray, just to remove as many of those bubbles that had formed. And then next you want to add in a pinch of cosmetic grade glitter. So I just used the back of a plastic fork because I didn't want to add too much, and then I just stirred this with a metal knife just so that can blend in nicely. But it did start to form bubbles, so I did have to spray more isopropyl spray into this once that was done. And then next you also want to spray that isopropyl spray into your silicone soap mold and around your toy. And once that's done and you've placed the toy into your silicone soap mold, you want to slowly pour on the corner of your soap mold about 1/3 to halfway of your melted soap base, so it just holds the toy down. And again, just spray this if you see any bubbles forming. And once that had cooled down, I had to reheat the remainder of the soap base that was in that Pyrex jug, just so it turned into liquid form again. And then I poured this in the corner of that silicone soap mold right to the very top. And then again, just sprayed isopropyl spray to get rid of those bubbles. And then finally, once that had cooled down and solidified, I just removed the soap from the soap mold and it looked something like this. So for the Mandalorian soap bar, you'll also need the same core things. So you will need 8 2x2 cm cubes of soap base. You'll also need a Pyrex jug. You'll need a silicone soap mold. You'll also need your Mandalorian toys, your isopropyl spray, and you'll also need to add in as an addition some purple lavender cosmetic grade glitter, as well as some purple soap dye, which is in pigment form. So first you want to take your soap base and microwave this again for 1.5 minutes, stopping every 30 seconds. So one thing to bear in mind, I didn't put any glitter at this stage, but there were still some glitter remaining from the Princess Leia soap, which ended up appearing in the soap bar that I made, but I was happy with that anyway. And once your soap has turned into liquid form, you then just want to give it a few sprays of isopropyl spray just to get rid of as many of those bubbles that started forming. And once you've also sprayed your toys and your silicone soap mold, you just want to place your toys into that mold and take your melted soap and just pour it at the corner of that soap mold itself, just so it avoids any bubbles forming. And you want to roughly do this around 1/3 of the way. And once that layer eventually cooled down, I just reheated the remainder of my liquid soap in the microwave again for 1.5 minutes, stopping every 30 seconds. And then I just re-poured again the remainder of this into that soap mold just to secure that section, but just leaving probably, I'd say, about 3 or 4 millimeters off the top. And again, I just sprayed some isopropyl spray because I could see more bubbles were forming. So once that second layer has eventually cooled down, you just want to take the remainder of your soap base in that Pyrex jug, reheat it till it turns back into liquid form. And then what I did was I used the back of a plastic fork just to scoop out a small amount of that purple dye and place it into the soap base itself. And then again, using a metal spoon, I just stirred this around. And then I did the exact same with the cosmetic grade glitter. I just scooped this out using the back of that plastic spoon because I wanted to only take a small amount, placed it into the soap base, and then again I stirred this with a metal spoon. I didn't want to use plastic because the plastic would have naturally melted into the soap base. And then finally, you just want to pour your purple soap base on top of your soap till it reaches the very top of that soap mold. And if you find that you've got some soap left over, don't waste this. You can just pour this into another silicone mold and let that cool, and then you can always use that whenever you want. And finally, once your soap has cooled down, you just want to peel this out of your soap mold, and it should look something like this. However, you can see that when I made this, the second layer, which was supposed to be clear, ended up looking more cloudier than the first layer. So again, stay tuned right to the very end and I'll explain why I think this had happened. Hey guys, so I hope you did like that DIY tutorial. If you did, please do give this video a big thumbs up, and if you want to see more of my how-to videos, then do click that subscribe button. But yeah, in terms of the mistakes that I made, so I did want to point out 2 key things. So the first thing is that when I first made this, which I didn't film at the beginning, well, I did film it, but I didn't put it at the beginning of the video, is that when I initially put the toy into the mold itself, I poured the whole melted soap base into the silicone salt mold, and what had happened was that the toy was so light it started floating to the top, and I thought if that solidifies then you won't even be able to see the toy when you peel the soap out of the mold. So I kind of got rid of that and then I redid it again. That's why in all my videos I pour only half of the soap to kind of hold the toy in place, and then the second half once that first half had cooled down and it was all solidified, so that it just held it nicely together. And I'm really pleased with the outcome of that because you can see the toys clearly through that soap mold. Now the second mistake that I made was that I kept reheating, especially for the Mandalorian soap, the same melted soap that I had reheated earlier and had eventually cooled down in that Pyrex jug. So I think that's the reason why that second layer on that Mandalorian soap looks super cloudy. So if you wanted to recreate this and let it look as transparent as possible on both ends of the soap, then what I would recommend is take half of your soap base, melt it and pour it to secure that toy at the bottom layer, just like I did in every single video. And then once that cooled down, then take your second half of your soap base, put it in the Pyrex jug, and then reheat that, so you're not reheating the same melted soap, and hopefully that will avoid that cloudy look. I'm still pleased with how the soap bar actually ended up looking, but even though that wasn't my intention. But yeah, if you did want to avoid that, then definitely don't keep reheating that same soap. But yeah, I hope you did like this video, and if you do like general fandom crafts, then I have created a playlist, and I'll leave the details below so you can check out my other videos in that too. But yeah, anyway, take care and I will see you soon. Bye!